Britain is quite in the business of apologising. You know, we have demanded apologies from people who've done wrong to us. You know, we put the Nazi leaders on trial, for heaven's sake, and executed a lot of them because of the wrongs they did. We, when it suits us, do demand action. We do demand apologies. We do demand compensation. I think that, you know, we have to do the right thing. You know, as you mentioned, much of Britain's wealth, in fact, the whole process of industrialization in this country, which made Britain great, was based upon the wealth extracted from the slave colonies. So I think, you know, it is fair and reasonable that we should make some attempt to redress those wrongs in the past. And in particular, the fact that the legacy of slavery isn't 200 years ago. It is still in these societies today. They're under development. They're being, the way they've been held back has in part, not in totality, but in part been due to the imposition of a slave economy from them. And when slavery was abolished, it meant that those countries were unprepared and unable to easily adapt. So I think we have to do the right thing.
And let me ask you, come back to you, if I may, Arley, Gill. Many would take the view that this call for reparations is politically motivated and financially opportunistic. You're trying it on.
It's not at all. And both Colin and your legal counsel there have the history wrong, in that, as Mr. Tatchell pointed out, the compensation in 1834 of the emancipation of the African enslaved peoples was to the slave owners and not to the persons who worked on the plantations for free. And we have to understand that what transpired during the slave trade and slavery was crimes against humanity. And yes, we would have had a Caribbean without the British being here. We had indigenous Kalinago people and Arawak people and Tainos people in Latin Americans on the Caribbean. So let's not make people feel that the Caribbean exists only when the Europeans came here. No, we had a Caribbean civilization long before. No, this is not about 200 years ago. Grenada is 48 years old. We got our independence from Great Britain in 1974. And up to 1974, Great Britain, the economic structure of the Caribbean, was dedicated to the extraction of wealth from the Caribbean to England. We built your cities. Now, after the Holocaust and the reign of Hitler, you, Britain, sat around the table with the Germans and ensured that the Jews received reparations for the Holocaust, and that generally European countries, through the Marshall Plan, got compensation for the damage that Hitler did. And Mr. Tatchell is right. The legacy of the slave trade and slavery is still here in the Caribbean. No, don't pretend that the Westminster political system is the best political system and that you have given that to the Caribbean as a gift. We do not enjoy that gift. We have greater intellectual ability to develop a political system that is much far superior to your Westminster system. You did not have a written constitution when you gave us one. So do not pretend that your political system is better than ours. And we have made a success of the imperfections of the British political system. The economic system that we continue to inherit here in the Caribbean was driven by the centuries of years of exploitation by Great Britain on the Caribbean. When we got our independence, the health system and the education system here in the Caribbean was in chaos. You need to read the Royal Commission of 1897 by Britain and the Morning Commission in 1930s. We have not inherited or benefited from Great Britain in a serious and significant way. We have done well for ourselves, but that must not allow. That must not let.
Okay, Calvin Robinson.
They must admit that they have committed crimes against humanity.
Okay.
Saying that it's happened 100 years or 200 years or 300 years ago does not save your soul.
Okay, Arley, Gill, let's get a response now from Calvin Robinson.
first of all, it's very difficult to debate people who resort to Godwin's law straight away as the first line of defense. Both of our opponents here have drawn parallels to Nazi Germany, which is absolutely outrageous, disgusting, and inappropriate for the context of this debate. But I'll put that aside. And
hold fire for one moment, Calvin. In what way was the treatment of Jewish people, more egregious than the treatment of slaves?
It happened at that
Not more
time.
egregious, but an entirely separate issue.
And Widdicombe, I'll come to you shortly. But if you would, Galvin, can you develop your response there to why you don't think that there are parallels between the Second World War and slavery?
No, I won't. I'd rather discuss the issue at hand. And if we have time afterwards, I'll happily go into the Second World War. But discussing the issue that we are talking about here, you can't on one hand say that Britain left a legacy of demolished civilization in the Caribbean, left an utter mess behind, and then on the other hand say, but we've made a great success out of this. You cannot sit there and say that the Queen of Parliaments, which is held up to be one of the best democratic systems in the world, is not good enough, and actually we could have done better ourselves. Then do better. You live in a democracy. You can vote for a party. You can you can put yourself up for election if you think you can do a better job. Don't sit here and tell us that our system is terrible. What I'm hearing here is, what did the Romans ever do for us? That's what I'm hearing. Oh, our hospitals are rubbish. Our education's rubbish. Our charities are rubbish. Everything you gave us is rubbish. We could have done better ourselves. Look, you live in a democracy. You live in a parliamentary democracy. You could do better yourself if you think you could do better yourself. But do not suggest that post-slave trade, that the countries in the Caribbean were just left and abandoned. That Great Britain has worked very strongly, much better than any other post-empire did with the former colonies, to ensure that these are thriving, civilized democracies and are independent nations that are supported within the structure of the British Commonwealth of Nations. The 1808 West African Squadron patrolled the seas for years and years to make sure that the slave trade ended, because we saw it as a great evil. And we not only abolished it for Great Britain, but around the world. And to suggest that only slave traders were compensated is a disingenuous argument, because that payment was made in order to end slavery, which is seen as an evil. If you don't think that payment should have been made, you don't think that slavery should have been ended. That was the way that it was. That's one of the ways that it was done, as well as at great cost by funding the Royal Navy to make sure that it was destroyed on a global scale. So it was part of a wider project. But there's modern day slavery going on today. I don't see the people on the panel protesting against that. I don't see them out in China protesting against the Uyghurs. I don't see them out in Afghanistan protesting against slavery that's going on there, or in the rest of the Middle East. And even at home in the United Kingdom, we have people being trafficked, and we have the Pakistani Muslim slave exploitation up in the Midlands. All of this stuff is going on today. Why are you not protesting about that? Why are you protesting about something that ended 300 years ago, that Britain had the biggest impact in ending and demolishing, because we all thought it was a great evil? Why are we obsessed with the negative of our past and not looking at the whole picture?
And, of course, people being paid £5 a day in slave-like conditions to make the smartphones we use, and perhaps £1 a day to stitch the T-shirts we wear. Anne Widdicombe, I've only got a couple of seconds. Closing thoughts.
Well, first of all, the comparison with the Nazis is invalid, because we were punishing the people who themselves had carried out the atrocities at that time that we were in a position to do so. We weren't punishing their descendants 200 years later. It is a ludicrous analogy, and is done simply to try and stir up emotions.